Good morning. Can anybody hear me?
Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for February 2nd, 2022. So it's 2/2/22. It just dawned on it, right? For those in the energy regulatory world, that's an auspicious number with respect to all of the Commission's grid modernization efforts, which I'm proud to announce that this agency in the state is a leader on. So we have some good news today, some bittersweet news. We're going to start with the good news, and I'll turn to my colleague, Commissioner Obi Linton, to announce what we're doing today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. It's a great opportunity, and one of the more better opportunities for me as a state employee, at least, to welcome a new utility to our supplier diversity program. Today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Barry Sweets from the Maryland American Water Company. It's somewhat unique for us in a sense that for many people, they were surprised. Maryland American Water has a very long and rich tradition of supporting supplier diversity initiatives. So everybody thought you were already a part of the supplier diversity program. So this is somewhat of a formality in the sense that it doesn't really introduce new responsibilities for you, but it does welcome you into what has been almost a 3-decade initiative started here in Maryland to encourage and grow diverse firms across the state of Maryland and in the region. So we'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining. I'd like to also thank some of our staff members, Amy McCarthy, Bob Irwin, and LaQuelly Green for working on this supply diversity program and initiative. I'll turn it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for all your hard work and working with Maryland American Water over the past year to arrive at this virtual signing ceremony today. I'll recognize President Barry Sweets for remarks.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioner Linton. Yeah, I'm so pleased to be here. And before I get to a few of the comments, we wouldn't. I'd be remiss if I didn't give the lawyers their chance to prepare this agreement and get it negotiated with you all. And so it's a kind of a formality, and we've been at this across American Water for a long time. We really are excited to be able to sign this MOU this morning and be here with you. We believe at Maryland American Water that diversity is vital to our success, and we recognize that extends to beyond our employees and to our suppliers. We can really best serve our customers when we support local businesses that represent, diverse ownership so they can grow and succeed in a meaningful way. It brings value to us. It brings value to our communities that we serve. So I want to thank the Commission, Chairman, for the leadership on this important initiative. And, we're really excited about this morning's signing and look forward to contributing to the success of the program. So thank you.
Thank you, President Sweets. It's very important, as Commissioner Linton said, because up until now, we have not had a water utility among the dozens of participants in our program. We meet every summer. This year, it will be on July 12th, where we will have our Supplier Diversity Conference. The venue is not known at present, but hopefully in the coming months. But I would just like to remind all who are listening today that last year and the year before, we continued to set records in terms of diverse spend. Last year, we hit an all-time new record of $1.2 billion spent with diverse suppliers. And that's according to our DSR ratio. So, Mr. President, thank you for your utilities for joining this program, and we'll look forward to your participation in July. And if you are ready, I have the MOU here, and we could execute. Black pen. I should not be using I'm sorry?
The other thing that's kind of remarkable for me is this happens to be my first virtual hearing with the Commission, and what a perfect way to celebrate that in the signing of this document. So am I good to sign now?
We are good to go. Well, congratulations to American Water.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of this this growing effort. We look forward to seeing you on July the 12th.
Thank you.
Turning to other business, it is with very mixed emotion today that I announce the departure of Susan Howard, who will be leaving the commission imminently after 8 years of very dedicated service to not only the commission, but she served as the right hand to so many executive secretaries, including Andrew Johnston, David Collins, Terry Romine, and many others. For those who are aware of the internal operations of the commission, Susan has been instrumental from working on everything from setting up these hearings to all of our personnel matters. As a fellow Long Islander, I will miss her in the conversations that we've had over the past few years, but we wish her good luck and best wishes. Fortunately for the state of Maryland, her services will be retained by the state, if not for the Public Service Commission. So thank you very much, Susan, for your years of service to the commission and to the state. We next turn to our business component with approval of the meeting minutes from our last administrative meeting on January 26, 2022. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. There are 2 items on today's consent agenda. The first is an application from LTS Telecom Services East LLC to provide facilities-based local exchange services. And the second is application from the National Cancer Institute in Frederick, Maryland for approval to construct a generation station.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions on these 2 consent agenda items? Seeing none, I would move that with respect to item number 1, that we grant the company requested operating authority, grant the requested COMAR waivers, accept the tariff pages for filing, and direct the company to file clean copies of the tariff pages that reflect the tariff pages in attachment C of staff's comments dated January 26th, 2022, with an effective date of February 2nd, 2022. With respect to item number 2, I move that we approve the application. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard. I vote aye. The motions are approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 3 on the administrative agenda is a request from the Department of Housing and Community Development for the adoption of guidelines for the use of repaid Empower multifamily energy efficiency and housing affordability funds. On this item for staff, we have Kevin Mosier, and for the department, Scott Falvey and Amy Grasso.
Thank you. Good morning. We'll begin with Mr. Mosier.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Kevin Mosier on behalf of staff. On December 21st, DHCD filed a request that the Commission issue an order adopting guidelines for the use of repayment of funds for MEHA loans or grants. DHCD prepared draft guidelines and circulated them to various parties for review and comment. However, consensus was not reached, and as such, DHC has prepared 3 options for the Commission to consider, which DHCD asks that the Commission select option 1. While DHCD makes the recommendation it should be allowed to use the rapid funds outside the operating budgets to allow for additional flexibility, staff believes that the funds should be assigned the utility and rate class out of which they were paid. Therefore, staff recommends the Commission approve DHCD's option number 3.
Thank you. We'll turn to counsel for DHCD.
Thank you and good morning. So with respect to the different options, option 1 is the preference of the department, and that has 2 distinctions from options 2 and 3. That one would allow the department to utilize the funds where they're needed at the time they're paid back, as opposed to where they were originated and for the purpose that they're needed as well. So residential versus commercial, and the basis for that is that we should be using them where they're, needed at the time and not where they were needed years ago. The other distinction has to do with EM and B, and that is the department's request that these funds not be subject to EM and B, or if they are, that any EM and B be paid out of the repaid funds. And the basis for that is just that it would be not an efficient use of the funding. It would to take funding out of the current cycle funds to pay for EM&V of the small amount of funds that are repaid into the program. And so that is the distinction. I heard the request stated as that the commission go along with option 3. However, the distinction that was mentioned was just that first distinction about how the funds be used, whether they're used in the originating territory and service, I'm sorry, if for residential or commercial. And I think that that distinction just leads us to option 2. The other distinction has to do with EM&V, which would lead you to option 3. If you have any questions, Scott Falvey, of course, is able to answer all of them with respect to the underlying reasoning for the department's request. And I also am happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grasso. We'll turn to questions beginning with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Grasso or Mr. Fowley, let me make sure I understand your proposal. So a repaid grant or loan that comes back to the department, say it was in Lexington Park, Maryland, St. Mary's County. You're proposing that when that money come back in from the ratepayer in St. Mary's County, it can be utilized anywhere in the state that you find a need. For instance, maybe Baltimore City. So it would be transferring from the ratepayer in St. Mary's County to some beneficiary in maybe theoretically Baltimore City. Am I understanding that correctly?
So that's correct. Excuse me, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure my audio is working okay. So that's our kind of our request. And so the request is intended to, as staff explained, to give DHCD the greatest flexibility with the funds. But the second part of the request too is to be able to track the funds to the level of detail to whether it's commercial or residential funds. Tracking to that level is administratively difficult, and currently with the processes that are in place, we're not able to actually get to the level of detail of residential and commercial for projects that have closed prior to today. And depending on the result of today, the department is certainly willing to, or the department will make whatever process changes are required that the commission requires. So to answer your question, Mr. O'Donnell, Commissioner O'Donnell, that's our proposal, is to be able to take the funds that may be issued in SMEDCO and use them in another territory if it's necessary. So in your example, if it was for Baltimore City, if we ran out of funds in the BGE territory and we had some SMEDCO funds available, it would be our preference to be able to use them in BGE. But if we're not able to, we also understand that.
Yeah, I'm just struggling. So part of the commission makeup requires geographic diversity of the state, and I'm probably a geographic diversity candidate on this commission. But it seems to me like that will concentrate ratepayer monies into the urban center of the state and leave the outlying areas, again, underserved, in my opinion. And I'm having a difficulty with doing that. So I'm not going to be supporting option 1. I will be supporting option 3 so that the monies are used in the area that they were generated in.
Commissioner Herman.
So I'm just curious, you say that it's only a small amount of funds that come back in the first place. The EM&V, I mean, how much money are you expecting that the EM&V would cost related to this reuse or use of the returned funds?
Sure. So the current budget provides for up to 4% of our budget. So if we had a $200,000 project that needed to have EM&V performed on it, we'd be looking at 4% of that, about $8,000, I guess.
Okay, and so the difference between option 2 and option 3 is that you want to use you want to pay that $8,000 out of the returned funds for EM&V, and in option 3, which is the staff's preferred option, that would get paid out of current EM&V. Do I have that right?
I'll just double check before I answer.
Yeah, option 3 is that all redeployed repaid funds would be subject to EM&V, and expenses relating to EM&V for those funds would be paid with current cycle EM&V budget funds. So that is correct.
Okay, and option 2, is there no EMV or?
With respect to EM&V, option 2 is the same as option 1, which is that projects receiving only repaid funds would not be subject to EM&V unless required by the commission or some type of future legislation. And that if EM&V is required, that it be paid for out of the repaid funds and not the current cycle funds. And so that is the same for options 1 and 2.
And the distinction with that too would be if a project received both current cycle funds and repaid funds, because it's receiving current cycle funds, it would automatically be part of the evaluation. But if it received only the repaid funds, then we would only use the repaid funds for evaluation on that project.
And that's option 2?
That's option 1 and 2.
Okay.
And the reason behind that is only so with 4% of our budget being applied towards EM&V, if we have a large amount of repaid funds and requires additional EM&V, it may actually eat into that current budget and require more of that budget to be used. Where it seems appropriate to be applying the funds from the repaid funding for that project that received only repaid funds.
Okay, so Mr. Mosier, why, tell me what your concern is with respect to EM&V only between 2 and 3. Why using all EMV out of the current and not doing what was just described?
Well, I'd start with, pardon me. I think that's the smaller of our two concerns. Our bigger concern was the same one addressed by Commissioner O'Donnell. But I think at the end of the day, it's just, because they're empower funds, we're just not comfortable with there not being, any verification of how efficiently they're being spent.
Okay, thank you. I think, Mr. Chairman, for my part, it seems to me to make sense that if it's all reused, all returned funds, then the EMV should probably come out of that. And if there's a combination with the new versus the old and they're using the new, then you use the new funds. So I think that might be option 2.
Option 2 does not require the money to be spent back into the
Yes, it does.
service territory.
It does.
I believe it does.
I believe it does.
That's the only distinction with option 2 between options 1 and 2. And of course, you can make option 4. You can do whatever you'd like, but that is the distinction in the 3 options that we submitted to you. Between 1 and 2, it has to do with the use of repaid funds in the service territories and for residential versus commercial. But EMV is the same.
Okay, so for me, it absolutely has to stay within the same company service territory for sure. And to the extent it can, to the category, between residential and commercial. However, the EM&V should occur, but I think it, for me, like I said, if it's all returned funds, then the EM&V probably could come out of the returned funds. So
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to still support option 3 because it seems like a level of accounting detail that the department's going to have to do with regard to these return funds and where's paid out of what. I think option 3 is the simpler answer. And I'm supporting option 3. I think it's straightforward, it's recommended by our staff, and they're the ones who did the evaluation on this, and I'm supporting option 3 because why go to that level of detail on accounting? I don't support it.
So we have one vote on record for option 2, one for option 3. Commissioners?
I tend to be, I think there's a strong argument being made for option 1, only in trying to find out where the need is. I certainly don't want to deprive and pit one jurisdiction against another. But I think I would like to see us give, a nod and deference to the expertise of DHCD. But I'm hearing the arguments, and I think with regard to EM and V, I think it's an important component of all these programs. I certainly don't want to see us do anything that's redundant, and I think option 2, I think meets, I think the concerns well. So with that and seeing where the focus seems to be at the table, I'm with option 2.
Well, wait 1 second. Let me refresh, because according to staff's buck sheet, I think I agree with Commissioner O'Donnell. It says option 3 is similar to 2, except it makes the repaid funds subject to EM and V. I think they need to be subject to EM and V. I was only talking about, I think it needs to be utilities, service territory specific, subject to EM and V. I was just responding to DHCD's argument that if it's all from a repay, they pay the EM and V through their repay. And that was the only thing that I was making the distinction on.
They're just gonna have to keep those returned funds accounted for separately and take the EMV out of that only instead of out of the bigger, broader budget.
Right.
So it's a level of accounting detail
Oh, I
that
see
I
what
think
you're
is
saying.
unnecessary because DHCD struggles enough with stuff.
Right,
And
I see
so
what you're saying.
we're gonna put a constraint on them to account for these funds and where they exactly come from unnecessarily. They ought to be running a program.
Right, I see what you're saying. All right, I think I changed my vote to 3. Sorry.
So, can we hear from DHCD? Is that true that there would be more, it would be more difficult to account for option 2 than option 3
No,
with EM and V?
It's not
Can I make a quick clarification? I think the issue is that what we said in option 1 is that DHC would prefer that they not be subject to EM and V, but if they are, that the EM and V costs come from the repaid funds. And so I think you'd like to strike out the first part of that, but the part where they come from, the payment for EM and V come from the repaid funds, that is the kind of default that is still part of option 2. Option 3 says they don't come from repaid funds, it comes from current cycle funds. So it sounds like maybe there's a little tweaking that would be needed if you were to go with option 2 to make it clear that there is EMV is required, but option 2 would still allow the EMV cost to be paid from repaid funds. And then I'm sorry, Scott, I'll let you know.
I won't try to confuse it anymore.
Was the question with respect to administrative burden to do with the distinction between using repaid funds as opposed to current cycle funds?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. What is the least burdensome to DHCD with regards to the EM and V funds?
I think it's about equal either way. When we have repaid funds and we issue funds for a project, we would set aside the amount of money, roughly 4% of that project to cover the cost. Or during the EM&V of the normal cycle, that project would just be included in the EM&V process, and the cost would be part of the greater EM&V cost.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Falvey. Any additional commissioner questioning? Seeing,
So that ends up on 2 or 3?
I'm sorry,
I'm
what?
trying to understand now where we are. Are we on 3 or 2 as far as the options with the?
My proposal?
Yeah.
I'm going to propose option 3.
Oh, you are.
I would move that we approve the Department of Housing and Community Development's option number 3 as proposed. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
All right,
and Commissioner Richard.
I vote aye, but I would have supported, I do support option one, but I'd rather just allow this to move forward unanimously.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, items number 4 and 5 are both from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. Number 4 consists of revisions to its natural gas standby service price, and number 5 consists of revisions to its gas choice and reliability charges. On both items, the participants are for staff, Olivia Kirkendall, Michael Dean, and Ben Baker; for the company, Bev Sikora, Brian Shearer, and John Frayne; and for various retail suppliers, Brian Green, as well as Leah Gibbons of NRG.
Thank you. We'll begin with commission staff.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Olivia Kirkendall on behalf of staff. On December 21st, 2021, Baltimore Gas and Electric filed revised rates and tariff pages to Rider 3 and 7. On January 26, 2022, BGE filed revised proposed rates and tariff pages for these riders. The proposed rates were revised as a result of concerns regarding the Rider 7 rate increase for third-party suppliers. Rider 3 rate reflects the pipeline capacity cost of providing standby service, which is a voluntary service for Schedule C daily metered customers. The average monthly bill impact for daily metered customers electing standby service will be approximately $500. Staff has requested that the standby customers receive notice of the rate change before it is billed, as this is a larger increase than previous years. The Rider 7 rate reflects charges associated with gas system capacity costs for firm customer, daily metered customers electing standby service, and third-party suppliers. BGE originally proposed a rate increase of approximately 9,000% for third-party suppliers. The company explained that two major reasons for this increase. These are: one, a large increase in the average margin cost between the cost of recallable and non-recallable capacity, and two, a difference in how BGE forecasted the load responsibility. After meeting with staff and some third-party suppliers, BGE reverted back to its original forecasting method in order to mitigate the increase to the third-party suppliers for the Rider 7 rate. This is an approximate increase of 4,000% in the rate. The process to set these rates was previously established through settlement. BGE has committed to evaluate possible changes to the approach for Riders 7 and 3 over the next year. Both staff and the third-party suppliers hope to participate. Staff recommends that the Commission accept BGE's proposed update to its Riders 3 and 7 for filing to be effective for the 12-month period beginning with February 2022 billings. Staff also recommends that the Commission direct the company to provide notice to standby customers impacted by the change in Rider 3 before it is billed. Thank you, and I am available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkendall. We'll turn to counsel for the Retail Energy Supply Association, Mr. Green.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors. Brian Green on behalf of Constellation New Energy Gas Division, Interstate Gas Supply, which is DBA IGS Energy, and NRG Energy and their affiliates. We filed comments on Monday. I don't have anything to add beyond those comments. This is a substantial increase that suppliers see and customers can see in two ways. One is if a supplier has a fixed rate retail contract with a customer that overlaps the billing period of February 1st, then the supplier is either going to absorb, well, if it's a fixed rate, the supplier is going to absorb that increase, which can flip a contract from profitable to unprofitable, especially if it's a 9,000% increase like this one in the margins that you see, which are pretty thin in the industry. Second is that if a customer has a contract with a supplier that allows the supplier to flow these costs through, then the customer is going to see these increases directly. So it is an issue for the suppliers and for customers, depending on the types of retail contracts that they may have, and also in the market generally, because it introduces significant risk into pricing going forward. So you have a risk premium in the contract. We were we had a good, and as we say in our comments, we had a good meeting with BGE and staff last week. We were pleased that BGE is committed, and so is staff, to working through this kind of issue going forward, to addressing the GCRC rate from a more holistic level. We acknowledge and recognize this is a product of a longstanding settlement. What we tried to indicate in our comments that we filed on Monday was that this is a problem, these types of big swings up or down that seem to happen quite frequently from year to year. We think there may be a better way going forward to kind of level out the market, so, or this issue, this rate change, so that it makes it a little less volatile for industry participants. So we're pleased that BGE said in its comments and to us orally in our conversation last week that they're committed to working through this in the future, and we look forward to participating in those discussions. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We will turn to counsel for the utility.
Good morning, Chairman Stanek and Commissioners. Beverly Sikora on behalf of BGE. I also have John Frayne with me and Brian Shear from our gas supply unit. First, I want to thank staff for its diligence and, really digging into this to try and understand the issues and, ultimately, getting us to realize that the issue that, changes that we made to try and produce a better, more accurate product, had consequences, downstream. And so, as everyone has said, we are definitely willing to work with staff, suppliers, whoever, wants to participate to come up with a better way to, what we're trying to do is allocate the costs of, capacity that we have in our portfolio that is not necessary to serve customers right now. There's a variety of reasons why it doesn't exactly match up. I like the lumpiness of having to procure capacity ahead of time. But, we do recognize that this is a settlement that, was complicated to begin with when it was first created, and has probably just gotten a little bit more complicated every year because of changes in the market. And we do realize that it's time to take a fresh look at this and, find a better way that doesn't have the impacts on suppliers that the current methodology has. I think, honestly, I am probably the only person around that was still around that was around when this settlement was first developed many, many years ago. So, that kind of tells you how old this is. As for staff's recommendation that we give notice to the schedule or the Rider 3 customers, I think there's less than 10 of those customers, and so BGE will definitely be reaching out to them beforehand, before those charges go on their bills, so that they will get notice that this is happening. And like I said, if you have any questions for us, we are available.
Thank you, Ms. Sikora. I don't believe I've had the opportunity yet to vote on a rate increase in the neighborhood of approximately 9,000%. However, as the parties recognize, this is per the agreement, and the math is the math in this case. I do appreciate the parties, all three parties, working together over the past week. It's been a model of cooperation, it appears. And I heard both Mr. Green and Ms. Sikora say that there must be a better way to do this, to even out the peaks and the valleys going forward for retail customers that are going to take this on the chin with the next billing cycle. So I would look forward and encourage the parties to continue these negotiations. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just clarify, are we doing the one item separately, or are we taking these two together?
Together.
Together, okay. So, Ms. Sikora, we have this issue every year, right? It's an annual filing. It's an adjustment based on the conditions and a lot of other things. But I've heard this promise of considering new methodologies multiple times now, I believe. And so I'm going to be straightforward with my question, and my questions are usually tough. Why is this not another hollow promise that I've heard before?
I'll be frank, BG has had some change in personnel and staffing, and I think there is definitely interest in revisiting things that maybe people weren't as personally invested in, and are willing to relook at it and understand the need to change. I think that's the best answer I can give. You've got people that are involved now that are open to more ideas of how to change things. And I think this year, not that the swings in prior years, weren't problematic, but I think that the swing or the issue this year, I think really for us drove home the need for taking a fresh look at this.
All right, fair enough. God willing, and the creek don't rise too high, I'll probably be here next year, so we'll see next year if there's progress made. I hope so. Let me ask you about the 9,000 proposed submittal, 9,000% plus increase. How did you pare that down to 4,000? How could it be that far off?
It actually, the change was because of something within our gas capacity plan. Various estimates in that for coming up with expected usage for the different types of customers. We had been using a methodology that it had been in place for a long time, and we decided to take a fresh look at that again because we're looking at things, and we didn't quite think that the old methodology was was accurate enough, so we changed it. We didn't realize the downstream impacts that would have on the Rider 7 rates at the time we did it. I think it's a 9,000% increase, and don't get me wrong, I realize that it's a lot. I think when you look at it on a dollar, dollar and cent basis, it's not quite as drastic. But it really was just a matter of how the capacity, and again, it's the complexity of this model that things that don't change a lot, or things that don't change a lot within other parts of the calculation, can ultimately have a very large impact on the ultimate rates.
So I'm not sure you're getting to my question though. You submitted your submittal, your filing originally had a 9,000% increase. That has been changed now, I think, if I'm reading the buck sheet correctly, to a 4,000% increase. I don't have a great deal of confidence in any of your numbers when I see that magnitude of change from 9,000% to 4,000%. Why such a large swing from your submitted numbers to what you agreed to as staff indicates? I think I'm reading that or remembering that correctly as my review of the buck sheet.
Again, it was a change in two numbers within the gas capacity plan for how much it is being allocated to the different categories of excess capacity.
Well, numbers obviously changed. I'm trying to figure out why I should be confident in any of these numbers.
Commissioner O'Donnell, this is John Frayne from BGE. If I could maybe help clarify a response for you. The change from the 9,000% increase to something more in the neighborhood of 4,000, it was really when we realized how large this rate increase would be and the impact it would have on suppliers and really their customers. We went back and looked at what was driving it and realized that this change that Ms. Cora is referring to in our estimation of the capacity for different customer classes was, while we really do believe it's a better estimation, we realized that change in that estimation was driving a lot of this 9,000% increase. So we, through discussions with staff and with suppliers, said, you know what, we're going to revert to our prior methodology, because that's also a reasonable methodology that's been used in for many years. And, we're going to do that now so that we mitigate this rate impact. And then we're going to commit to looking at the overall mechanism again, so that we can make sure that the mechanism makes sense given market changes and other changes that have happened since the original settlement agreement was entered into.
I appreciate that. On behalf of retail competition, the suppliers, the ratepayers, the citizens of Maryland, the policy of competition in the state, these numbers need to be more than a swag. They need to be right, especially if you're going to have a negative impact on customer supplier, third-party suppliers and competitive forces in this deregulated state. So it feels like a swag to me.
Understood, sir. And that is absolutely something that we are going to be looking at. And one of the main focuses will be, the estimates that are used in the calculations and do those make sense and are they necessary?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, for staff, me, Mr. Baker, Mr. Dean. I just wanted to find out, just a clarification. It looks like there's a commitment. I was pleased to see the commitment to the parties getting together to look at this gas choice and reliability charge. Is this something that's already in place? Is this something that staff is leading? And I asked that because I noted in Mr. Green's filing, they're requesting a commission-directed formal meetings on this topic. So I just wanted to find out what the status is. Is this something that has already been committed to, or is it something that parties are looking for a commission direction?
So it's only been a verbal commitment and a written commitment amongst the parties, I guess, in terms of what's been stated to the commission in their box sheets, but there's been no sort of formal agreement of when those meetings will occur or what sort of timeline. So if you wanted to codify it as we want this to happen definitively, then I think a commission directive would be appreciated there, because right now it's just verbal commitments and what's been put on the paper in front of you now. So there's no other formal process currently established. I think I was looking to BG&E. We were going to wait for BG&E to do their initial review, and then I was waiting. Then when they told us that they had done that, then we would get involved.
Okay, so Mr. Baker, you support Mr. Green's call for a commission-directed?
I think that's appropriate. Yes, I'd be okay with that. Yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest maybe we add that to the motion if that's appropriate.
I think the parties have heard loud and clear, and the parties have committed. So that direction has now been transmitted officially from the commission to the parties and staff.
Okay.
Good. With that, I will propose with respect to item number 4 that we accept the tariff revisions for filing to be effective with the 12-month billing period beginning with February 2022 billings, and direct the company to provide notice to customers impacted by the change in rates before it is billed. And with respect to item number 5, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing to be effective for the 12-month period beginning with February 2022 billings. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
The understanding that there will be meetings of the parties.
Aye. The motions are approved. Thank you. Before we adjourn today, the commission at 11 a.m. Eastern will take up case number 9486. We have a hearing there with respect to Washington Gas Lights Stride budget, surcharge, and project list. So stay on this channel if you'd like to stay at 11 a.m. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.